Hi, it's Corey, and today you're gonna learn 5 super common mistakes that people make on the ukulele. All right, let's just hop into it. So pretty much every single day I am teaching in school and seeing how young students are learning ukulele. I have friends that have reached out that are starting to learn ukulele that are adults, and basically every age in between. So I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what mistakes people are making when playing the instrument. And a lot of times people just don't even know they're making it because they're still doing something that produces a sound or a good sound. So they think, oh, well, it sounds good, I must be doing something right, but that's not always the case. So hopefully this video will give you an idea of what some of those really common mistakes are, and hopefully you can correct them. Also, I just want to point out too, if you are a beginner, please be aware I have literally made every single one of these mistakes, and I still probably make mistakes. Often these things are things we do unconsciously, and sometimes it can just be we've done it for so long it's become muscle memory. That's why it's super important to be aware of those things. And actually, since I've started making these kind of videos, I've become aware of a lot more of the mistakes that I do already make, and I'm trying to take those steps to make sure I can correct them, because I want to make sure my practice is as good as possible, so I am providing a good model for everyone else too. All right, let's hop into number 1. The number 1 mistake people make when playing the ukulele is using the wrong fingerings. I say that when I have definitely recommended sometimes not the correct fingerings when people are playing, but honestly, whenever you see a chord chart, that is a recommended finger positioning that you can use. However, those are typically recommendations from expert players. There's always times where you might want to adjust things, but a lot of times when I see people trying to make the chords, they're not following the chord charts. And those recommendations are meant to make changing chords really easily, but also to make it so your hand's not cramping up. So I'm gonna go over a couple of the really common chords and talk about their positioning and some of the mistakes I see. The number 1 chord that I see people making the wrong fingering for is the C major chord. For that, you use your 3rd finger and you place it on the 1st string, 3rd fret. A lot of times people will use their 1st finger for that chord, but if you use your 1st finger, that's kind of canceling out the rest of your hand for when it comes to changing a chord. So for instance, say you're on the C chord. A lot of times you're gonna go to an A minor from here. If you go to an A minor is right here. It's the 2nd fret, 4th string. So if you have your 3rd finger down, your 2nd finger is already open in order to move to the A minor. All you have to do is lift up. So that transition's really easy. Or same thing if you're going to an F, both for an F, it's your 1st finger and your 2nd finger. If you're using a C, those fingers are already open. So if you're using the 1st finger here, yes, technically it sounds the same, but if I use my 1st finger here, I have to move my entire hand over to get to any of these other chords. Whereas if it's here, I just have to shift slightly. And then the same thing with a G major chord. If you play from a C to go to a G, you just have to move that 3rd finger over 1 and place those other 2 fingers down. If you're using that 1st finger, it takes a lot longer to transition. And obviously people can get really, really used to it and figure it out and make adjustments, but that's one of the ones that I see the most common. I also notice a lot of people on a D major use their thumb to make that chord. They'll go like this, and for me, that's super uncomfortable. I don't even know how some of my students do that. And if you're one of my students and you're doing that, please don't do that. Use the 1, 2, 3 that we talk about. It really you have to put your thumb out. Your thumb, the only job your thumb's really doing is it's supporting. Now sometimes it's gonna peek out, and I see people doing this from beginners all the way up to the most expert people, and that's pretty normal. Your thumb's gonna poke out on occasion. But that's not why it's poking out. It's not poking out to make a D major chord. You want your fingers right here with 1, 2, 3. Some people will also try to bar it, but I always hit this 1st string whenever I try to bar it, and I don't understand why people do, but yeah, it's 1, 2, 3 for that chord, not your thumb, not a barred chord. If you're doing that, I guess power to you. You can do it better than I can, but I almost always hit that string. So it really helps to make a nice clear sound. All right. And then finally, the other chord that is a really common chord that people use, I see the wrong fingering on, would be the A minor. And then the reason why that one's so important, it's played with your second finger on the 4th string, 2nd fret. And from here, you almost always are gonna go to an F, or not always, I can't say that, but there's a couple really common progressions, and in most of them, you're moving to an F from there. And so if you have your finger here in an A minor position, all you have to do is put your other finger down. You don't even have to lift up, and that makes it really, really, really easy to continue the progression. People a lot of times will use their first finger, and again, kind of like with that C major, it sounds fine, but this is like so much easier. And then also if you need to go to an A major chord, it's just right there too. And then same, you can transition to a D really easily. You can transition to a D minor incredibly easy. That's one you go to sometimes too. So you'll have your A, all you're doing is going from the F and then adding that 3rd string. So chord positions with your fingering, they really, really matter. So make sure when you're learning a song, unless you're changing it for a very specific reason, don't change it just cause. And sometimes your hands will slip. I do that on occasion too, where I'm just trying to get through the song, but it's not the best practice. So even though like I do it, it's a mistake, and I'm working on correcting it too. So that's definitely the #1 mistake I see people making. All right, number 2. The second most common mistake I see people making is they try to add a strumming pattern way before they're ready. I see this a lot with my younger students, but also some other people too when I've worked with adults. What I mean by that is, like, if I recommend playing just on the chord changes, like say they're going from a C to then a G, what they try to do, I'll lift it up so you can see a little bit better, they try to like do this type thing, and it doesn't really sound good. Like, just because you're moving fast, it doesn't mean the sound's really good. So like I can move up and down really fast and make it sound good, or I'm just doing that and like strings are being hit unevenly. So if I'm going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, like that, that's different because I'm actually following like a rhythmic pattern versus just blah, going as fast as I can. I always tell my students that the goal for making music is just that. You want to make music. You don't want to just make sound. And I do tell them as well, and this is something that was really like drilled into us when I was in college, is that music is organized sound, and if it's not organized, it just kind of leaves you with a bunch of noise. So you don't want to make noise on the instrument, you want to make sound. When it comes time for actually adding a strumming pattern, go really, really slow and add it. So if you want to go up and down really, really fast, start with down, up, 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 until eventually you're going in an actual down up pattern versus just. And some people do, like you do see that in different styles, but there's like a very specific way how to do that. That makes it sound really good. Number 3, third most common mistake I see people doing is trying to sing and play at the same time, with A, not being very familiar with the singing of the song, or B, not being very familiar with the chord. There are ways that you can approach a song for the first time and sing it for the first time. However, there are a lot of ways to do that that aren't super effective. If you think it's something that you might find valuable, I can certainly make a separate video talking about how to work on playing the ukulele and singing at the same time, because it really is a skill that you do have to work on. But the biggest thing you can do to help yourself is be really familiar with the song you're trying to play. If you're kind of sort of familiar with the melody line and you're not quite sure of the tempo and like keeping a steady beat, I would say just work on the chords separately and then listen to the song a lot, get very familiar with it, and then try to apply the chords. Because if you're really familiar with the song, you're gonna know intuitively where those chords fall. It's almost like a feeling a lot of times when that happens, but if you don't know the song very well, it's really, really hard to do that. Also, a tip you can use is use a metronome. There are tons of metronome apps out there, like you can get them free for on your cell phone. One I use in particular is just Metronome Timer. So it looks like this. And what's cool is you can either set it to tap, and then you can actually tap out the pace that you want, and then you can play it and it tells you what your tempo is, and then it has that sound. But essentially a metronome is a way that helps you to keep the beat. So if you are not super familiar with the song, you're trying to practice the ukulele, set a metronome or get really, really familiar with the song. Number 4, the fourth biggest mistake I see people making is not holding the ukulele the correct way. Now, there are different ways you can hold it. Different people have different recommendations, but what I'm talking about specifically is people will take the ukulele and rather than having, like, for instance, the fretboard is facing the camera right now, they will turn it like this so that they can see their hands and where they're placing it on the fretboard. But like, yeah, I can make the same sound, but it's a little awkward. So that's one thing I especially have to work on with my students, is getting them not to rely on looking at your hands. Get that muscle memory so you don't have to look at your hands, because if you're looking at your hands over here, you're putting a lot of energy into just that, where you want to get to a point where you don't even have to worry about what's going on with your left hand. All right, you just want to be able to play the chords, get through them, move to whatever you need to. Okay. Number 5, the fifth and final most common mistake I see people making on the ukulele, and maybe this is kind of like a lame one, I don't know, you tell me, but I see them give up way too early. Whether that is on a song that they're working on or a new chord, they will get frustrated that they don't learn it right away, and rather than being like, oh, like, I'm starting this is a new skill, the expectation that they have for themselves is often way too high, and that kind of really discourages them. I see that a lot with my students in particular, where they'll hear me play the ukulele and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna play that and it's not gonna be any big deal. And then they get really frustrated when they can't do it exactly right. When I first started playing ukulele, I was really, really bad. Like, I went to school for vocal music, to teach other students. That was my primary instrument. I've never been overly great with instruments when it comes to like using my hands. I do not personally have very good hand-eye coordination, so learning the ukulele was actually pretty hard for me, and a lot of it, what I did was like self-taught. So I got like super discouraged initially because I was like, it's only 4 strings, I should be a lot better at this. But after having the instrument for like about a year and then not playing it at all, I picked it back up because I was a traveling teacher, and bringing a guitar, of which I had more experience playing, bringing a guitar to the classes was a little hard because I had to carry all of my other stuff with me, and I was like, oh, well, I guess I could just use a ukulele. It's small, it's light, it's easy to bring with me. And then after that point is when I really started to learn how to play it a lot more, and it really didn't sound very great at first. I would get really jealous because if you've seen some other videos, you may have seen my fiance. He's an amazing musician, and he can pretty much like pick up any instrument and play it really, really well. And he didn't even play the ukulele, and he like picked it up and made it sound so much better than me. And I got discouraged for like a second, and then he's like, Corey, you went to school for vocal music and I've been playing instruments my entire life. That's a huge difference. And so that's one thing I would say for sure is like, don't compare yourself to other people. Don't give up because it's not sounding perfect. It's gonna be whatever it's gonna be for you at that point in time. I wish I had videos of myself playing when I first started out, because like the G chord, for instance, was really, really hard for me. I couldn't get my fingers in that position for a long time until I really thought about it and then stepped back and went slowly and approached it the same way I would teach any of my students to do something new. And it really helped a lot. But if you can get past that sort of like frustration of like, oh, my fingers hurt, my thumb hurts, or my pointer finger hurts kind of from strumming so much, and you really like get past that, you're gonna find that everything else is so much easier because you got through that first kind of hurdle. So you're not gonna be perfect, amazing, and some people might. Some people are very like talented, so that might be very easy for them. But if you're one of those people that things are working a little bit slower for you, don't get discouraged. Do what you can now. Maybe that means omitting a chord every once in a while and only playing on the chords that you're really solid on and building it up over time. But you can 100% do it. Those are my 5 biggest mistakes beginning ukulele players make when they're first starting out. If you are a person that is that you watch this and you're like, well, I'm making some of those mistakes. Don't worry. Everybody makes them at some point. Like I said, I made every single one of those mistakes. I still make some of those mistakes. If you find videos like this or you want more specific kind of technique playing videos, make sure to comment down below and let me know that. Also, if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. I would love you to join our little community that we have building here. I try to come out with a new video every single week and hopefully a couple extra throughout the week as well. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.